Hey everyone, and welcome to your August 13th, 2020 edition of News, Games, and More here on IGN. I'm Michael, and I'm here with Casey, Janet, and Ryan. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to my panelists for joining me. First and foremost, our headline story, I'm sure what the bulk of you are here to talk about, Fortnite versus Apple in a battle royale, shall we say. Seems fitting. Essentially, I'm going to try and give a little bit of the overview here. Please, anyone, things have developed rapidly. Jump in and correct me if I'm mistaken. But my general impression is that Fortnite app has been removed from the iOS store. Apple says for violating their terms of service, which essentially prohibit you from creating an app store within the app store, which Fortnite ran afoul of by having V-Bucks and trying to introduce discounts and sort of essentially find a loophole way to cut around Apple's sort of we always get a cut of everything on the iOS App Store, period. And we don't want you implementing clever loopholes or anything that tries to get around that. Of course, with Epic, creators of Fortnite launching the Epic Game Store, they're interested in sort of renegotiating that balance of power, and we see that happening, playing out in an epic way on the news stage today. Is that the general gist? I know there's a lot more details, but is that a fair encapsulation? What did I miss?
Mm, I don't I think that is a fair encapsulation. I there were some details that I found interesting, like those fees that Epic was talking about are 30%, which is extremely high from I'm just a consumer, I'm not a business person, but to me that sounds really high that 30% of their income is going straight to Apple. Um, but as far as other details, let's see. Epic also put out a video which was kind of a parody of Apple's 1984 um, computer commercial, which was also going for themes of the novel 1984. And I'm thinking, how did they put this together so fast? How did this was this planned? Did they know this was going to happen today?
Well, I do think that they've been working on this for
Yes.
about the last week or so. So the relevant backstory that I can provide as the Xbox guy here is the fact that last week word broke that Apple would be roadblocking Microsoft with regard to Project xCloud, their streaming service that's not going to be compatible with iOS devices.
I'm
And
upset about that.
yeah, I mean, I'm an Apple guy, so yeah, I'm currently SOL when it comes to streaming my games, which is unfortunate. But Tim Sweeney, who's the programming guru behind the Unreal Engine, and he's an executive at Epic. He was clearly not thrilled about that before. This is before the
Hmm.
Epic took their action today. So if you go down Tim Sweeney's timeline on his Twitter feed, you look at last week, he tweeted, Apple has outlawed the metaverse. The principle they state, taken literally, would rule out all cross platform ecosystems and games with user created modes, not just xCloud, Stadia, and GeForce Now, but also Fortnite, Minecraft, and Roblox. And then he retweeted at some point last week as well, a user who had tweeted, I love Apple products. I am typing this on an iPhone. These shenanigans have me ready to move on. This is what the third gaming related app that's been shut down this week because Apple can't control every little ounce of it. And that was, again, before today's Fortnite action. So Tim Sweeney clearly was very put off by the activity of Apple with regard to Microsoft last week, and I think they've been seething and brewing this up, this response, this lawsuit, and the 1984 Macintosh parody thing ever since. And certainly, I mean, Tim is looking out for, first and foremost, his billion-dollar interests. Let's be clear about that. But it so happens that his billion-dollar interests align with ours as little tiny gamers too. So in this case, go Tim.
And
Yeah,
with
I think it's
the oh, go ahead, please.
oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, I think if we're speaking of, like, the larger context in which this is happening, I think it's fascinating that this is coming at a time where we're having a lot of conversations in the games industry as to what is and isn't anti-consumer, whether it's products that you have available or whether it's exclusives or what have you. So this is sort of like a weirdly convenient moment for this to come to a head because we have these conversations already happening. We have gamers demanding this. And like Ryan said, it ends up being both favorable, both from a business standpoint and also from consumer facing, how it feels as gamers. We inherently are going to side with what's best for our interest as well.
Yes, and Epic are certainly positioning what's playing out in that light, or like trying to. Apple sort of releasing what I would call boilerplate, the rules are the rules, corporate statements like, quote, uh, the, the fact that their business interests now lead them to push for a special arrangement does not change the fact that these guidelines create a level playing field for all developers. It feels like a very streamlined classic, like, this is the pool. Don't run at the pool. We told you there was no lifeguard on duty. Those are the rules. Sorry, moving on. Trying to sort of minimize the historical importance of it as a turn in the business. Whereas we see things like Project xCloud and Stadia and the Epic Game Store. And I think there's no question that in the general shape of like gaming history, getting your games digitally is going to diversify and there's going to be competition in that field. And I can't really blame Apple on the one hand for trying to forestall that development as long as possible. And for Epic Game Store, on the other hand, or Epic generally, rather, trying to position themselves as, hey, look, we're the little guy here. We're the pro consumer revolutionary, because in this case, like Ryan points out, our interests align. But at the end of the day, they're a gigantic company and they're sort of renegotiating revenue splitting, which is
Yeah.
fine. But I don't know that it's what George Orwell was like passionately writing
No.
about in 1984.
I was
I mean,
Although I
do
do dig
think
the reference to the
I do
classic
think
ad.
for gamers, though, at least in this situation, just us as video game players, it's not a bad thing to have Microsoft, a $1 trillion company, pissed off at Apple. Epic, a large company, pissed off at Apple. And Epic, by the way, is backed by uh, Tencent, one of the world's biggest entertainment conglomerates, have them pissed off at Apple too. So it's as we saw with the Washington NFL Football Club finally giving in to decades of pressure to change their offensive name, only when their biggest sponsor, FedEx, who has their name on the stadium naming rights, said, "Yeah, we don't like this. We're gonna not do business with you anymore if the football team continues to be named the same thing it is." And then like the next day, not quite literally, but almost, the ownership of the Washington team said, "Okay, we'll change the name." So
Hmm.
pressure works, specifically financial pressure from these other huge corporations.
Yeah,
And
high tech caveman in comments says all they're going to do is cement the legality of these policies. I think that's an interesting angle on what you just said. I don't know that it'll play out that way, but he says Apple is sued more than anyone and likely has more lawyers than Epic does developers. So again, it's just interesting to think of it all in the context of a corporation on corporation negotiation that Epic has turned into a public affair, and I think they know that they have. Um, their stance is going to appeal more to the average person on the street, and they're very much trying to take this story and this like battle of wills, if you will, and turn it public facing because they know they'll win in that arena. And it's an interesting tactic, but of course at the end of the day, a lot of this will be decided in court, and I'm sure Apple has a robust legal team, and we'll see how that works out. Whenever you try to bust up, I'm not saying Apple's a monopoly myself personally on record, but this sort of has the cast of an antitrust. Like, we're trying to get something from being monopolized and diversify it. That is always a battle between public and consumer will and the courts. So we'll see what happens. They are going all in, though, even in their legal documentation, in their what is it? Injunction. So Apple filed a lawsuit and they filed an injunction asking for, I believe, injunctive relief against Apple that included the statement, quote, Apple has become what it once railed against, the behemoth seeking to control markets, block competition, and stifle innovation. And of course, they released this video via Fortnite. So it's a
on
very public facing tactic about a business interchange. I find that really interesting.
on one hand, I can see how a lot of Apple's policies can hurt the little guy, like a small game developer trying to, put out their game on Apple Arcade or any of the iOS platforms. But Fortnite can eat that 30% charge without passing it on to their players and feel and be fine for it. So they're not I don't really see them as the ones truly suffering from this. It's probably the little guys that might be, but even if they did succeed in some of this and Apple agreed to reduce their their fees, would I don't know if any games would actually pass on those savings to us. I think they would just get more profit.
Well, and someone brought, I think it was you, Casey, brought up right before we started rolling that, yeah, in the sense that you're fighting over slices of a pie, but you make the pie. They
Mhm.
could increase the price of V-Bucks if they wanted to within whatever system to make up the discrepancy. Of course, then you're basically taking the tactic of trying to gloss over the fact that you're taking it out of the consumer's end. I think Epic, as a lot of people in comments are pointing out, and I should mention the positive light, could say in the positive context is big enough to do this. There's not a lot of companies who could go against Apple and eat the losses it will require and show up in court and still know that at the end of the day, Fortnite will remain profitable. The Epic Games Store will find a home, like will find a way. Life finds a way. So you do have to be sort of a big corporate interest to take this kind of swing, and at least it's a pro-consumer swing. So yeah, thank you, chat, for setting me straight. But yeah, you might see free Fortnite trending. You might see it repeatedly popping up. And so I think they've won over some hearts and minds. Are there any more thoughts on this before I move on? Because I know it's a big story.
Most Wanted 60 just said, what's going to happen is that Fortnite on iOS is going to be left behind on updates while everyone else is going to get updates.
I wonder how much that moves the needle for the average Fortnite player.
Yeah,
Because this
to
is a
jump
community that
ship.
accepts crossplay between mobile and PC, which I just learned right before we started rolling, and I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around how that would be fine. But maybe I'm the dinosaur here in mobile gaming. You just connect your controller and you're good to go. But I feel like there would be latency discrepancy and things. I don't know. Uh, yeah, time will tell. Okay, I'm going to move us on. Our second story, truly delightful. Gosh, we live in a postmodern era. We were talking about the commercial from 1984 being referenced today. Most kids playing Fortnite are like, what is this in reference to? I have to imagine. Now we have being released on the same day it was aired on CBS in 1978, a new Star Wars holiday special. That's right. The famously bad thing. We're remaking that now. Let's see how bad we can make it. But I'm sure it will be tongue in cheek because it's coming from the Lego universe. That's right. We're getting the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special. It will be coming to Disney Plus on November 17th. It's a 45-minute feature exclusively on Disney Plus, as you'd expect. And supposedly will directly follow the events of the Rise of Skywalker. So Rey will set off on a quest with BB-8 to gain a deeper knowledge of the Force ahead of Life Day. If
And
you're not
learn the
old
true
enough,
meaning of Christmas.
that's right. If you're not old enough to remember the original, or you haven't like dug into that terrible corner of the past of why did we make this, Life Day features the traditional Wookiee celebration of life, features heavily and is sort of analogous to our Christmas. So now Rey is going to learn the meaning of Life Day. Do we
Perfect.
have any Star Wars holiday special fans here? Who's seen it? I've seen it in the ironic sense that you see it in
Yeah, do
college.
we have any at all? I think is the question. And I think everyone, like I didn't watch it, but the people I knew
Mhm.
that watched it also ironically watched it in college. We're like, oh, let's make everyone watch it. Like, haha. But what's interesting about this is Lego's like movies are known for sort of playfully riffing on the source text, but the source text itself is kind of a mess. So I wonder how those riffs are going to be received, and especially people that don't know that source text. And the Lego movies are also, a lot of people can enjoy them, but they are geared towards children. So I'm wondering how that will translate. I feel like that's going to be a pretty challenging thing to take on in a way that's going to be as powerful as the other stuff they've produced.
Frankly, I was surprised it worked and yet thought it did work in Lego Movie with Batman. I mean, Batman was treated in this hyper postmodern way where he's aware that he's a Lego Batman and it almost doesn't matter. And as much as Apple wants to cancel the metaverse, I think all pop culture fans are now fluent in the concept of a metaverse. You can throw as many Spider-Men as you wanted us with different origin stories. We understand the various Earths. And so I don't know. If it was from another team, I'd be more skeptical, but I actually have pretty high hopes because I do think the Lego melding with IP universe tends to handle these things pretty well.
I would bet a small amount of money, maybe like lunch, that Mark Hamill, being the prolific voice actor that he is in this in some way, even if not, not necessarily as Luke or Luke's ghost, but just as some little like guard or alien or something. I'll bet they sneak him in there somehow.
Well, they have said that she'll come into contact with young Luke. Let me make sure this is right. Knowledge of the Force. Yep, at a mysterious Jedi temple. Rey will be hurled into a cross-timeline adventure through beloved moments. So I'm just learning this now, but based on our own article on IGN.com, yeah, they've immediately gone, like we were just saying, full metaverse. She's going to
Cool.
travel through time to tour. She's going to Forrest Gump it, essentially, and tour big, important Star Wars moments. She will meet young Luke, Darth Vader, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and other iconic heroes and villains from the saga. Meanwhile, there's a B-plot where Finn, Poe, Chewie, Rose, and the droids have to prepare for Life Day. Now that's the Star Wars holiday special I remember. Just knitting by the fire and making bad Star Wars Christmas puns.
Prepare for Life Day, you will.
Exactly.
How long were
Perfect.
you holding on to that? Is my question.
What our detached irony being our main medium of communication, or the Star Wars holiday special, or the
No,
Yoda
that
voice?
specific impression. Like it came out quick. It was effective. Like you had
Or
that
you get,
ready to
it's
go.
gotta know when to hold them and know when to fold them. It's
Yeah, Yoda's
That is
like
what they
Christopher
say.
Walken. I think we're all allowed to have one, and it's fine. Everyone accepts it.
Everyone in the YouTube chat is partly arguing over whether Star Wars is bad or not, which I didn't expect. I never expected that from you.
Star
YouTube.
Wars just generally, Star Wars at all?
Star Wars bad.
parts of it are bad.
Yeah, it is kind of one of those
Cool.
franchises that I think there's now enough negative that when you do the math, sometimes those numbers might not come up the way you want them to, is what I'll say, and just kind of leave it at that. Obviously, everyone has different tastes and opinions on the films, but it's enough of a mixed bag that it's like, do I even like this
I
anymore?
mean,
I'm not really sure.
of the 9 movies, not the 9 main Skywalker saga movies, arguably more of them were bad than good. Right? If
Yes,
you had the
many
3
would say.
great ones,
I
and
just didn't
then
know this is the argument we were going to get into. This is a big
I'm
argument.
sorry. I apologize.
No, for sure.
I
I
think
would
we can
tend
all
to
agree,
agree.
though, Lego
I
good.
I
So
would get it's like the 4, 5, and 4, 5, 6, and I would say 7 was good. I know a lot of people crap on it for retreading 4, but I thought it was pretty good. But then if we kind of call it's like the Supreme Court. There's like a swing vote of whether it's going to go good or go bad, which way it's going to go.
The chutzpah on you, man, though, to just wear your numerical Star Wars opinions on your sleeves. I guess
I
I'm too
agree with
much of
those
a coward.
numbers that Ryan just said.
I pretty
Like,
much
you.
agree with everything you just said, but I would never sign my name to that.
it's almost as if changing directors and writers constantly would make for a sloppy story. Like, who could have predicted? Who could have
Well,
predicted?
and that's what kind of works about the holiday special, right? Because you aren't expecting a sloppy story. I'm expecting a Lego-like mishmash of nonsense. And
I love
I think in franchises where they've gone on long enough that we can stop being precious with them, you'll start seeing this more and more. Like it compares, very obviously to Star Trek Lower Decks, which I'm old enough to remember a time in my life where you would never do that with a TV franchise that takes itself seriously. That's so odd. And yet now I accept it without a second thought. That's great. Yeah, comedy spinoff of very serious franchises. That's fine. I think in large part because we're all very fluid in multiple dimensions and retellings and remakes and remasters. We're all sort of living in this era where we understand that it's content, that it's modules of content. And there's something freeing about that. I know a lot of Star Wars fans say, I just want to see more different voices and creators tell different types of stories within the broader Star Wars universe, much like we got with Mandalorian. And yeah, I love it. So to me, sky's the limit, and you should be irreverent. I would like to see it taken in weird directions because we've already taken in so many directions. You're not going to damage the thing. The thing's been
That's
arguably
yes.
damaged already. Yeah. All
Thanks,
right.
JJ.
That's my spiel. Thank you, JJ. We
Thank you,
salute
JJ, for damaging it.
Story 3. Miles Morales will supposedly get a full arc in the Spider-Man PS5 game, which is an interesting phrase. We were talking in the morning news meeting about whether that speaks to the length of the game, and I don't think it does. I think it just speaks to the content of the story itself. Brian Horton, the game's director, said, quote, "This is a full arc from Miles Morales that started in Spider-Man on PS4. We really are completing this hero's coming of age in our game. It is a complete story." So he obviously wants that to sink in, wants us to know that. And of course, I think in the light of the recent sort of news beat around this, where people were a little confused about the messaging of whether this was a DLC, a standalone, a next gen title, what it was. I think they're trying to get a handle on that and just communicate to fans what this is going to be. And my big takeaway on this is I think they're going to be fine no matter what, unless they make a bad game, in the sense that the messaging coming out beat by beat, sometimes they stumble, but I'm going to buy the Spider-Man next gen game. You didn't have to, you had me at Spider-Man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, is that true for everyone? Is everyone a proud Spider-Maner here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the next game. I think the first one was fantastic. I definitely, agree that this is them trying to re-steer the narrative and kind of get it back on. Let's get excited for this game. Let's see what it's about. Let's drop an image here and there. Let's sort of rebuild the hype train, because when we first saw it, everyone's like, great, more Spider-Man. Miles, awesome. And it was a very exciting thing, especially there's been a lot of positive Spider-Man content, even outside of games as well, that kind of is going to help like inject life into this franchise even more so than it already has. But the kind of mishandling of the, oh, it's not a full game, it's just short, is kind of a little bit of an issue. I do think there's not really a good way to communicate that, hey, this is a smaller experience hour wise, but it is still like a full game, without having to lead with what I think a lot of gamers interpret as a negative, it being a shorter game. I think we have to remember though, the first Spider-Man on PS4 was like the average time was like a 16-ish hour experience. I think an 8 or 10 hour game is what I kind of expect from a general mainline story campaign single player experience. Maybe that's not the case for all gamers. We all have different tastes and expectations, but I don't think having something that size is so shockingly small that maybe they need to lead with that right away. I do think they're trying to kind of reconvene and say, hey, this is going to feel like a full game. You're not going to feel like you're just getting an episode or a small slice of something, after the whole kind of debacle of what is this, what isn't it.
Yeah, to your exact point, Janet, I'm curious if Spider-Man Miles Morales will be a full price game or not. If I'm sure if it is, it'll probably have enough content and feel like a totally full game, even if it's maybe not quite as short as the original Spider-Man on PS4. But I wonder if it might be $50, probably wouldn't go as low as 40, even if it was kind of a little smaller in scale and scope. But I assume it'll be 60, but I'm kind of wondering, but based on everything that they have been saying that and trying to seemingly calibrate expectations a little bit, I do wonder if there's a chance that it might just be like a $50 thing.
Yeah, and I know brands don't like to reference other successful brands in the rollout of their thing, but I think it's good that they finally just said, Insomniac said, "quote It's a shorter spin-off likened in scope to the Lost Legacy game in the Uncharted series." I'm like, yes, that's what it
Right, which
always
was
was,
cheaper.
and you
Yeah, it was like
could have just said
$49.
that, but you didn't
Mhm.
want to reference another game while you were promoting your game, and I get that, but that's what it is. It's Lost Legacy, and I love Lost Legacy, and I think there's room there's more and more room in AAA gaming for these standalone experiences that aren't necessarily as, like, you're not getting per pound the same amount of game, but the assets are there. Building games is iterative. It just makes so much sense. If you can come up with another great story, why not get the team together and get, a holiday special out,
And
an
I think
interstitial piece of content.
I think the difference is, and again, it's not too late where it's August, where we've got a couple months to go, but with Uncharted, with Lost Legacy, that expectation of what it is was set right from the jump. Whereas Spider-Man, they unveiled it as here's the next big Spider-Man game, and they've kind of had to walk it back a little bit. I'm not don't take me out of sort of too literally there or out of context, but they did kind of they had that debut trailer at the PS5 event, and it was like, whoa, Spider-Man Miles Morales, that's amazing. And within that event, they did nothing to suggest that it was Lost Legacy like, and they've kind of been having to zero in on that since. So I think maybe that's kind of the difference in the expectation of the community and the reaction of the community between the two games. So I'm kind of curious to see how they're able to message it and how that messaging lands between now and launch.
I think too what exacerbates sort of the drama behind the size and the scope of this game is who the character is. Miles is like a big deal, especially like as the Spider Verse has sort of evolved and we've gotten to know the different iterations of like what Spider-Man lore has. Versus if you think of Uncharted Lost Legacy, like those kind of played as a lot more side characters or side experiences. So it sort of made sense that it was a spin-off, right? When you had
Yeah.
Daxter, you kind of weren't expecting this to be, it was on the PSP also, but it
Mhm.
made sense that that was sort of a smaller thing because it was a beloved character, but not something that you felt like could really take center stage versus Miles. It's like he's just also Spider-Man. Why wouldn't he get center stage? And I think there's also just been a lot of unrest in terms of that, this idea of sort of Miles being relegated to not really, the Spider-Man, and I think that's kind of upsetting to fans as well, which I think is the more understandable part rather than the game length. I don't think games need to be a certain length to be quality, great games. I think make it as long as you need to, but I do think it left a lot of people feeling like Miles didn't really get the stage that we wanted for him.
Yeah,
I
great point.
agree. Yeah, obviously, Into the Spider Verse introduced a whole new swath of people to Miles and his story, and that's honestly that's my favorite Marvel movie, and Spider Man's been my favorite superhero since I was but a babe, and I've firmly in my head switched that switch from Peter Parker to Miles Morales. Miles Morales is like everything to me, so I would take a full Miles Morales game anytime, and I do think that's a valid point. You can see some frustration among fans who I still fully expect will buy the game and are excited to play it. But Pork Vader speaks for many of them when he says Miles Morales will have his own arc, dot, 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 but we're still not going to show any gameplay. We get that a lot over here at IGN, and I understand at the end of the day, the gamers just want to see the product. So it's interesting to see companies try and lay out the story that they would like, the shape of the story they'd like the rollout to take. And gamers just sort of push back and voice what they want, which is they don't want silence, but they want to see actionable gameplay immediately. And I don't know that that's always achievable, so I pity developers sometimes.
Well,
But
I'm not sure Insomniac and Sony are going to be in a huge hurry to show gameplay until it's super polished and ready, given the next gen expectations as this being the big launched game for PS5, given what they just watched Microsoft go through with the
right.
reception to the Halo gameplay that was clearly unfinished.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's there's a Wild West sort of feel about we're moving rapidly in an all digital direction, lifestyle like gaming lifestyle wise, and there's games like I know Subnautica Below Zero or Grounded. I did the Grounded open beta or whatever you call it, and I was like, I'm excited for this game, but there's almost nothing here. They really let us in early. It's been interesting to see developers try and find that line of when you let people in because they want to get excited about your game, they want to experience immediately. And yet, if you hand them a completely unfinished thing, they're going to take you to task for it. So I think every company sort of tries to thread that needle, and some have more success than others. All right. Speaking of I tried to do a Sidney Goodman patented transition, but I don't have it. Story number 4. There, that's a Swaim style transition. Story 4. Metro developer, 4A or A4? 4A,
4A
that's right.
games, yeah.
4A games. I like that. 4A games, shooting for even higher than AAA. That's fun. But the developers, mainly known for the Metro games, have been acquired by Embracer Group and are supposedly working on a new Metro installment as well as, quote, a new AAA IP. Ryan, I was hoping you could fill me in on a little of the details here because you brought the story to my attention. Are you a Metro guy?
Yeah, I mean, they've never weirdly quite clicked with me for whatever reason, but it's been a respected, really highly rated series for a long time. And
Yeah.
I think one reason that people like it, obviously it's good, but it's been a single player only first person shooter series, a very story driven, campaign driven experience. And now they're talking about they want to, they're under new ownership and they're going to work with Saber and they want to build another single player thing, but with multiplayer also. So it'll be kind of interesting to see the introduction of multiplayer into the Metro universe, and that will have really fans keeping a close eye on this. And if the campaign doesn't turn out well, even though whether this is the reason or not, people are going to be left wondering, well, is it because you allocated resources to make a multiplayer mode that this series never had and we didn't necessarily want? So it's a big opportunity for them moving forward, because hey, if they can get a big time multiplayer experience going that can really extend the life of their game and have them sell more copies and make more money. But if it's possible, it can also go wrong too. So the hope is, as a gamer, that Embracer more or less leaves 4A alone to just do their thing, and you guys just keep cutting the checks over there at Embracer, and we over here at 4A will keep making the games. So yeah, it's certainly a move of financial security for 4A, and from here we'll just kind of see where I'll be curious to keep an eye on it.
And I'm hopeful that that'll be the case. Embracer recently won Studios. So I find it hard to believe you could be massively invasive with every single developer that you acquire when you acquire up Solo Media, Powwow Entertainment, X Talent, Interactive, and in these companies, and they're going to let the developers do what they do best. From C4A Games CEO Dan Sharp, he says they're working on, quote, an entirely new project as well as the Metro installment that combines the AAA production values of 4A games and the combined engine and technology know-how and Saber's experience on multiplayer and live operations. So it's also always fun to see a very solid developer's sort of sophomore effort. You know, when they've had a game that is a hit and they've supported it with a number of sequels and they're continuing to build it out, but they're going to go ahead and introduce a new idea and imagine something big and new and ambitious and see if they can get us into that. So I'm also really excited just to see 4A take another swing, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Metro is so far it's like it for them, or
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
think
There might be other
the only
projects. Yeah.
thing they've ever done, I believe.
Yeah. So I'm really interested to see what the team comes up with.
Yeah.
I think too that I didn't play the earlier Metro games, but I did play Metro Exodus. I actually worked on the guide for IGN for Metro Exodus, and I
Mm.
hadn't played any of the games before. I thought it was an excellent entry point into the franchise. You didn't really need that background, but if you had it, it sort of enhanced things. And from everyone I've spoken to about the older games, I'm like, oh well, should I go back and play the older ones? And they're like, you really don't need to, because, and not to say that those aren't still good games, but a lot of people that I've spoken to say that Metro Exodus has been the best in the franchise so far. So seeing them kind of on this steady rise, you really hope to see that this kind of acquisition will hopefully foster that and make that even better and kind of push it further, and hopefully just kind of build on the success they've already had. The idea of multiplayer in a game like Metro, I never really found the gunplay to be super. It's not what I envisioned for a multiplayer experience. It's not like
Hmm.
particularly sharp. It could still be fun though. There's a lot of different shooter experiences that aren't like hardcore tactical and are a little bit more approachable, I guess, for people that aren't necessarily like FPS experts. But yeah, I definitely went to Metro for the story, and I thought that was really what that and the ambiance that it created. It kind of had those like horror elements infused in, a bit of crafting. Like I think it's a lot more rounded of a game than just a shooter. That is its genre, but I feel like it has a lot more going for it than just that. I think too we're seeing some of the crossbow gameplay on screen things. Like it's not just a shooter, so I'm not sure exactly
Hmm.
what that multiplayer could look like. And I think it would be more interesting if they did want to do a multiplayer component, to think about the other things that Metro brings to the table aside from just the gunplay, because to me there's really so much more going on with that world and with that game than just that mechanic.
It would be kind of a disservice to just turn it into a deathmatch type situation.
I think, Janet, I think you're totally right to assume that it would be a first-person shooter multiplayer, because they make Metro games, and like you said, the first-person shooter element isn't the main element of those games. You think the story and there's a lot more going on than just the gunplay, but it could be something totally different. Like we don't know. Like maybe they're taking this opportunity and funding to try something a little bit more outside of the box from what they're used to.
It's a deck building game. I'm calling it.
Perfect. With
Yeah.
guns.
Well, Jan, I want to ask if you agree or disagree with C-Core IG, who says, "Oh, they're working on a new Metro game. I love the ending of Metro Exodus, but it didn't feel like it needed a sequel, though." Was that a big wrap up, like cathartic ending story beat, Metro Exodus?
Yeah, without getting into spoilers, I would say that
Please.
it didn't feel like it was, oh, I wonder what else is going on in this specific universe. Obviously, there are still characters that live lives and continue
Right.
on surviving in this world, but it didn't feel like, oh, I see how they're going to pass the baton. Once again, I didn't play the earlier ones. I'm not sure if the earlier ones did feel that way. I kind of get the
Mhm.
sense that it's all part of one kind of lore and world and universe, and it's also tied. It's tied into the books, right? Or did the games come before the books? I don't know which direction that goes
I
in,
think the
but
books were first.
Yeah.
like I don't really remember offhand, but the world is kind of the key component there, and there's kind of several stories coming out of that world. So I think it makes sense to continue making Metro games, but I don't necessarily think we're going to see a continuation of like where we left off in Exodus. We could, but I don't think we need to.
For the record, IGN called Metro Exodus the best Metro game yet and gave it an 8.5. Not too shabby.
I believe it's on Game Pass as well, so people should
Good
play it if they
trend.
haven't.
Worth playing.
Yeah. All right. Our final story for the day, I believe. Yeah, scrolling down, checking my notes. Yeah. Various theaters, of course. I mean, like lots of businesses, making complicated and tentative plans to reopen and sort of return to the world. Combining two IGN stories here, but AMC will reopen theaters at more than 100 locations in the US on August 20th. And in a related story, admission prices will be set at 15 cents, which our own Jim Vegvoto pointed out the last time ticket prices were 15 cents was the last nationwide pandemic. Although I'm sure that's not the connection they wanted me to draw attention to. AMC is setting ticket prices at 15 cents for a very specific slate of movies that they have in honor of, I believe, the founding of AMC and what ticket prices cost then. That's right. What moviegoers would have paid in 1920, the year that the company's founders, the Dubinsky brothers, began operations with a single movie screen in Kansas City, Missouri. Now, as someone who used to go to nickel arcades all the time, I want to be clear with people on the technicalities. You cannot not every movie is 15 cents. The throwback ticket prices apply to the chain slate of legacy movies with things like Black Panther and The Empire Strikes Back. Still things worth going to the theater to see if you feel safe doing so. Tickets for catalog titles will increase to $5 a piece after opening day, while new movies will cost approximately $10. So at the same time, our streaming rentals are becoming premium content. The actual theater experience is trying to get things revved up by lowering prices. The big question is, do we think there's a chance that this will work? Will this get butts in seats? Is anyone here going to see Tenet?
I'm
Not in a theater.
definitely
Yeah.
not going to theaters. I honestly was never a really big movie theater goer previously because they were so expensive. And in normal circumstances, like, you know what, 15-cent tickets may have lured me out. But considering the circumstances, I've gotten pretty comfortable with my home. I have a couch, I've got snacks, I've got all of the streaming services. I could split a $20 fee to rent a new movie at home, right? And I was most curious at like what are they doing to try and prevent the spread of COVID while opening the theaters with this crazy scheme of 15-cent tickets. And I did look into the reduced auditorium capacities. It's like, okay, like how much are they reducing it, right?
Mhm.
And all AMC auditoriums are at a 30% capacity or less, and they ask guests to leave at least one seat between other guests. But like that's not enough. One seat between guests. It doesn't seem
We were
like
doing that already. Who's sitting directly next to strangers?
yeah.
Like,
I
Yeah,
mean,
no
if
one does that.
possible, yeah. They also say masks are required for guests and crew throughout the theater. Your mask must cover your nose and mouth and fit snugly around your face and chin. You cannot use neck gaiters, open chin bandanas, or masks with vents or exhalation valves. So get ready for some viral videos of people flipping out at movie theaters.
literal
demanding,
viral videos.
that's right. Demanding to not
It
wear
had
their
to be
mask
said.
and sit right next to you.
So
That
I'll
was
be on.
solid.
I'll
I
be on my
just
deathbed. I'll be on my deathbed with COVID-19 as it chokes the last bit out of my lungs. My final words: Christopher Nolan's a great filmmaker. It was worth it.
totally worth it.
I've never seen Empire in theaters. That would be quite an experience, but I'm sure I could have found a way to make that happen before the COVID pandemic, and I should have. So it's frankly on me.
I
Um,
did just
yeah.
learn also recently that retail stores in some places like Florida, don't actually enforce their customers to wear masks. So they can go into the stores and not wear masks if they so choose, and the employees can do nothing about it. I had no idea.
Yeah,
So,
enforcement of something like you have to wear a mask to come here is by its nature going to be a complicated proposition,
mhm,
right? If
absolutely.
there's a small rural retailer who's like, I don't enforce that, they'll probably get away with it for a while
Yeah.
before anyone comes in and makes them enforce it.
So are there
Um,
no concessions then at any AMC
I
theaters
wondered
currently?
about that as well.
So
Because how are
a
you
s
snacking through
so
your mask?
concessions are open and you are allowed to snack and you're allowed to take off your mask in order to snack, which is why the one seat
This is
between
already
you
losing
You're
its
like,
lesson.
must
Mike,
See,
wear masks unless you gotta eat some popcorn, in
But
which
or
case
you
fif-
were
I
just
mean,
eating,
okay.
10,
or you claim you're
15
gonna eat
cents.
soon. Yeah.
I was eating.
That's already so I'm the opposite of Casey in that I used to go to the movie theater every weekend. It's my favorite place to be. It's very like nostalgic for me. I love being in the theater. And yet I am very unlikely to go to a theater anytime soon. And it's more sad for me than I think it is for you. But at the same time,
Yeah.
it's not sad enough to change my mind. I ain't going. There's even just an aspect of even if the odds are high that things are being done properly and I'm going to be safe, the mere thought, right? For years to come, the mere thought is going to be distracting and it's going to take some time to return to normalcy. I agree with the Amazon who says, yeah, it's a no from me. Spending an hour and a half to 2 hours in a room and all of a sudden someone sneezes, I'm out. Like, I know that it probably doesn't mean anything, but it's too much tension. It's too much agita to bring into the theater for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
AMC's like I was kind of an in between because I didn't go like every weekend at all. Definitely not every weekend. That's kind of a big commitment. But I did have the AMC like movie pass premiere thing. I forgot the name of it already. Where you got like it's $23, you get to see like however many movies you want. I think maybe some other
Yeah.
discounts. So I got that with the intention of going more. But honestly, as a consumer, AMC is kind of just really unappealing to me. I feel like their whole approach to this pandemic has been awful, just god awful. Not only in their lack of enforcement or hesitation to enforce things, but also in the urgency to which they clearly want to make money without doing any effort towards customer safety or towards providing quality service. Like you're trying to get me to pay 15 cents to see a
Well, they're
movie that I already
employees
can see.
too.
Yeah, like it's on I mean, AMC kind of has like where else are you gonna see movies, right? There's like what Cinemax or wherever. Like I don't even know what it's called. There's like one here,
Regal.
Cinemark.
but
Yeah.
what exactly? Yeah, there's not that many, but it's just really off-putting to me. Even when the pandemic eventually is over, AMC isn't appealing to me anymore because of the way they're handling this. So I definitely won't be 15 cents to see a movie I can already see home when things are getting infected.
And this is gonna sound odd to say, I gotta say the IMAX experience in like a Dolby headset, that's getting pretty close. So I'll watch a movie on my Oculus and it's not too shabby.
Real quick,
That's
I just wanted
AMC.
to
Yeah, AMC
say
should pivot to that.
Headsets, there you
Well, at
go.
home, but yeah, at home
yeah.
distribution with VR
Oh,
headsets.
I would totally pay a nominal fee to stream a brand new movie to my Oculus. Yeah, on that
That would be
company.
cool. And real
Yeah.
quick, I just wanted to say, even though I'm personally don't feel comfortable going to a movie, if you want to do it, you do you. I'm not judging you. You go spend
For
your
I am
sure.
15
judging
cents
you.
and go see a movie.
Do not go. I am judging you. Do not hurt everyone to see a movie that you can already see.
Well, you're only hurting at people who also are willing to hurt other people.
Yeah, but
So
then those people go to the grocery store later where
crap.
you
Yeah.
have
You're
to
right.
go.
All they're
There's
touching the mangoes.
there is
No,
a
I'm not
ripple
about it.
effect. Yeah.
Not the mangoes.
Well, that was,
Exactly.
someone in comments, this was a comment we flagged, Gary G83 was says, I've actually been to the cinema today with my daughter and it wasn't a big deal as long as they have a seating plan to keep people separated. It's no different than going to a supermarket, and most don't have an issue. And I will admit, like,
Mhm.
as we
Quiet.
go, if you had an assembly